Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chair of the Board of the America First Policy Institute, Linda McMahon.
Well, thank you all very much. We're so happy to welcome you here to our AFPI headquarters in Washington, D.C. And for those of you who were watching us via live stream, welcome. It's an honor to host such a distinguished group to discuss an incredibly important and timely bill, the Lower Energy Costs Act. As families across the country face crippling inflation and a looming recession, it is time for real solutions. We must act to restore and advance the kind of economic growth that lifts up all Americans. And with this mandate in mind, embracing America First energy policies must be at the forefront for all of us. Ending the destructive war on American energy and unleashing affordable, reliable American energy is key to slashing inflation, revitalizing economic growth, and building a more prosperous and more secure America. We can and must allow American energy abundance to drive us forward toward a future defined by economic and national strength, not foreign dependence and American weakness. And who could argue that we must be independent? And if we have to rely on our energy that we are importing into the United States, that clearly makes us weaker. And this is also why it is absolutely vital now that House leadership has chosen to designate the Lower Energy Costs Act as H.R.1, which means that those of us outside of government need to understand they are making this the #1 priority of the 118th Congress in fulfilling its commitment to America. We are so privileged today to have with us leaders who understand just how important that is, including our own thought leaders here at AFPI, Larry Kudlow, Vice Chair of AFPI, David Bernhardt, and Steve Moore, and representation from our leaders on the Hill who are bringing this all to life. We're so pleased to welcome this morning Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Representatives Cathy McMorris Rodgers, Bruce Westerman, and Sam Graves, who chair all 3 committees that are involved in this incredibly important bill. We definitely have the right people for this job. I know it's going to be a great discussion, and we here at FPI look forward to carrying the work that's being done here today forward into results for the American people. And to give us a little bit more insight into this, please welcome our warrior and servant leader, the President and CEO of AFPI, Ms. Brooke Rollins.
How about Linda McMahon, everyone, the chairman of our board? Well, what a joy to see you all here with us today. Such an incredible honor to have you with us. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I know a lot of you have come far and wide. I know we have many more thousands watching on live stream. Today is an important day, and it is an important discussion. And so to have you all here, again, is just such a blessing. Most in this room are familiar with the America First Policy Institute, and many of you have been active with us since we launched just under 2 years ago. And for that, let me say thank you. But for those who are new to our family, at the America First Policy Institute, we craft policy, we counsel policy makers, we amplify activists, we challenge media narratives, unless it's coming from the Kudlow show. And we do everything we can to build an America where Americans come first. We were conceived and established to do no small thing to save the country that we so love. Centuries of American history and a great sense of the vast American future alike call us to this work. What we do is nothing less than our duty to the yesterday that brought us here and to the tomorrow that we make for our children and our grandchildren. Our 22 policy centers at AFPI are led by 8 former cabinet secretaries. You'll get to hear from one today, including former Secretary David Bernhardt. also led by 3 former governors, 50 former White House officials make up our 150 staff, a Hall of Fame football coach in Coach Lou Holtz, and several National Football League stars, a civil rights icon, numerous pastors that are America's pastors, and so many more. But perhaps the one that you may know the best is here with us today. He is the man with the #1 rated business show on TV, and what an extraordinary honor. When Larry and I sat down late November, early December of 2020, and we had a discussion on how do we keep these policies going? How do we make this administration that was only here for 4 years, how do we ensure that the prosperity that reached every corner of this great country will continue? How do we ensure that it isn't just about the next White House or the White House after that, but the next 50 White Houses? And how do we ensure that the America First policies aren't just prevalent here in Washington, D.C., but also out in the states where under the 10th Amendment and our Founding Fathers' vision, the guardians at the gate for liberty and freedom truly reside. You all know the story, or most of you do, but again today we're here to talk about energy. I'll tell you this, there's one reason that we're all gathered, and that is because our House Republicans, led by Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Speaker McCarthy, made a commitment to America, and they have kept it. Such a commitment was needed because the Biden administration abandoned the American people with reckless policies, both domestic and foreign, and we see the consequences in full force, not, of course, the least of which is an unprovoked war in Ukraine, but threatening the entire world peace order. I had the privilege of working alongside many who are here today in the last administration, as many of you know, but I will say this, that long after we are gone, historians will look back at our moment, the moment of the first term of Donald J. Trump, as a brilliant flourishing, a golden age, a shining moment when a great nation was unleashed to truly be great. But quite possibly, at least at the top of the wins that were achieved in the last administration, was that for the first time in 70 years, America became energy independent. Of course, the Biden regime wasted no time in dismantling these wins in pursuit of a radical, far-left green wish list. But fortunately, this group here today, and especially the leaders who you were about to hear from, have made restoring American energy independence priority #1 with the Lower Energy Costs Act. Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Congresswoman McMorris, Rodgers, Congressman Westerman, and Congressman Graves, thank you for putting America first with this new legislation. Please know that we stand beside you in getting this legislation across the finish line and to the American people who so desperately need it. What a privilege now to introduce my friend, my policy partner, my partner in crime, and the founder and vice chairman of the America First Policy Institute. He served both President Reagan and President Trump, which was awesome when we were all working together to have someone from the Reagan era, where I think he was 12 when he worked for President Reagan, by the way, but also with President Trump. And even, as we love to call him, America's favorite 75-year-old, showing no sign. Very well. Please help me welcome the extraordinary Larry Kudlow, who will introduce our panel.
Well, that was very kind of you. Never talk about a woman's age, but whatever. We have an all-star panel for an all-star bill. I know a lot of you in the group. Thank you for coming. I see a whole lot of familiar faces. If you get a call from one of my producers or bookers, please come on the show. Just saying, you know how it is. I'm going to get to our all-stars in just a minute. I just want to say some quick things about this very important H.R.1, very, very important, showing that the House Republican, the new House Republican majority, is in fact moving to save the economy and rejuvenate economic growth and prosperity. There is nothing more important, nothing more important than oil and gas. Okay, that's just the reality. And I'm not opposed to renewables. I'm an all-the-above guy. But look around, the numbers, even if I give them 7, 8, I'll give them 10% renewables, which actually isn't true. You've still got 75% fossil fuels run this country. And that is not going to change, certainly not in my lifetime. I can look around. That's not going to change in your lifetime either. So that is why H.R.1 is so important. For months after the Republicans won the House, I had all these distinguished guests on the show, including my special friend Steve Scalise. I had Kevin McCarthy. I had Cathy on the show. And I would say to them, H.R.1, H.R.1, unlock the spigots for oil and gas and fossil fuels. Unlock the spigots. Kevin would kid me, Kevin McCarthy. He would laugh. He'd say, it just brings tears to your eyes when I say H.R.1. I go, yes, Kevin. It sends a shiver down my spine. So here we are. And I just want to say one other thing. Mike Faulkner, where is he? Right there you go. He's our chief economist and all-around bigwig here for AFPI. You know, he raised the point that I've been making and others. You look at refined petroleum products, affect every part of American life and every part of the American economy. It's really quite remarkable. And that's why this bill is so important, because it permeates the whole economy. If you lower the cost of that, you not only promote economic growth, you reduce inflation, you help reduce interest rates, you help reduce life worries for middle-income working folks. Refined petroleum products permeate every nook and cranny of the economy. Unlocking the spigots will unleash affordable energy. That includes renewables as well, by the way, because some of these permitting problems have stopped renewables. But just bear with me. Fossil fuels, okay, you ready for this? This is just a short list. Fossil fuels affect phones, clothes, toothpaste, laptops, diapers, toys, hospital operating rooms, life-saving medical products, hearing aids, glasses, soaps, aspirin. And the list is virtually endless. People don't think about that. And the other part I want to say is, I'm good with renewables, and I'm good with policies to help renewables. But you don't take 70 or 75% of the economy. You don't crush 3/4 of your power in order to promote 10%. You help lift all boats. That is the big mistake here, and Americans know it full well. So that's it for me. We have Steve Scalise. You all know him, House Majority Leader, one of the great stories in our political lifetime. Sam Graves, one of the contributors to this from the great state of Missouri, if I got that right. Yep. Cathy McMorris Rodgers, an old, very old and dear friend of mine, a key part of this.
Be careful about talking about our age.
Young. And Bruce Westerman. Westerman. Mm-hmm. Where are you from, Bruce?
Arkansas.
Arkansas. How's Sarah doing?
Great.
Doing great. Huh? We should get Sarah here. We'll get Sarah here. All right. Steve's the quarterback. He's really the leader on this. He's also the great #2 in the House, Steve Scalise. Talk to us about this bill and why it's so crucial.
Well, thank you, Larry. It's always great to be with Larry. We've been talking about this for so long, about just getting American energy production going again. And want to thank the America First Policy Institute for hosting this and for what y'all are doing to help us build a coalition around the country, because I think people are watching Congress more than they ever have to see, because their lives are being adversely affected by President Biden's agenda. And there's probably no single element that shows you how bad President Biden's agenda has been for families, especially lower income families, than his anti-American energy policies. It was day one. He went after Keystone. He went after permits. He went after lease sales. It's almost impossible to develop energy in America anymore. And what happened right after? The price started shooting through the roof, because America's the only free market economy that has vast reserves of oil, of natural gas. And so if you shut America down, there are other places that have energy, but go look at them. Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. Is this really the world that we want to be addicted to? And yet that's what President Biden did by shutting down American energy. And by the way, if you listen to his global warming czars, you know, you got John Kerry flying all around the world on private jets, which, by the way, uses fossil fuels. It's jet fuel. They don't have solar panels on Air Force One, not on John Kerry's private jets, his fleet that he flies around. But they'll fly around the world having all these summits talking about how to crush American energy. They exempt China, the world's biggest polluter. They beg Russia, other countries for our energy when we make it here cleaner than anywhere else in the world. We ought to lean into that, take them on the science, because no country does it better. These folks that are against American energy, they wake up every day trying to attack America, trying to bash America, and saying, oh, America's the wrong of the world. We're the best place to do business. We're the best place to make things. We're the most generous nation in the world. And when we make energy, it lowers the cost for families, because we want to make energy not just for ourselves, but for our friends around the world. And if we can't do it, the rest of the world hurts. But especially here in America, low and middle income families are the ones that get kicked in the gut the hardest. So the whole idea behind the Lower Energy Costs Act is exactly that. It's lowering costs for families, allowing us to produce energy in America so we don't have to be addicted to foreign countries that don't like us. And so we deal with a lot of things that these three committees worked on, and I know each of them are going to talk about what they did. The Transportation Committee, Energy and Commerce Committee, Natural Resources Committee, all focused on getting the government out of the way, removing the hurdles. We have the best standards in the world. So again, if you're not doing it here, you're doing it in a country, go look at the Congo and their water standards. Is that really where we want to get some of our critical minerals? China. We open up critical minerals too. We also put money back in the pockets of families by completely repealing Biden's natural gas tax. That's a $6 billion windfall to low-income families who are struggling. And I would argue the biggest driver of inflation, which is the biggest threat to families today, is this anti-American energy policy of Joe Biden's, because it affects everything else. You're not only paying 40% more at the pump, you're not only paying 20 to 30 or 40% more in your household electricity costs, but it permeates through every other segment of our society when you go to the grocery store or anywhere else. So lowering American energy costs is good for families, it's good for our economy, and it's good for our friends all around the world. That's why it's H.R.1. That's why we're going to bring this bill to the floor Thursday for a vote and pass it. I would challenge President Biden, who issued a veto threat on this bill yesterday because he said his energy policies are so good. I would tell him to go back out into the real world. He loves talking about Scranton, Pennsylvania. Go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and ask those families how hard times are because of his high energy costs that he's put in place on them. Families are struggling because of his policies. This reverses that.
Just one thing for Steve, before I get to the others. If you look historically, the last 20-some-odd years, Vladimir Putin only invades and adventurism when oil is around $100 or higher. You can go back to 2008, oil was $125, $150. He went into Georgia. If you go to 2014 or 2015, oil got back to $100. He took Crimea. And then last year, when oil got over $100, he went and invaded more in eastern Ukraine. He doesn't move because that's his financing. We are financing Putin's wars by these tight anti-fossil fuel wars against energy here.
Yeah, it's a real important point, and I'll give you a data point on this. So before the invasion of Ukraine, you can go back and look. Joe Biden was begging Putin to produce more oil so that we could get his oil because he's shutting down American energy. Now, prior to the invasion, and you knew what Putin was doing, he was already marshaling about 100,000 troops on the northern border of Ukraine, getting ready to invade. And at that same point that Biden was begging him to produce more oil for us, we in Europe, America and Europe, were sending Putin $700 million a day buying his energy. That's how much money Putin was getting to finance this war from America and Europe. Germany saw it with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which Biden green-lighted. He wasn't against all pipelines, he was just against American pipelines. Kills Keystone, green-lights Nord Stream 2 to give a gift to Putin prior to that invasion. Again, $700 million a day Putin was making selling his oil to Biden and to Europe. That's what's at stake when you have really, really bad energy policy. Let's make it here. We can help our friends in Europe and all around the world and take away the power from the tyrants and the dictators like Putin, like OPEC. OPEC's irrelevant if we're making our own energy.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very important point. Cathy McMorris Rodgers, old friend, chair of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. Your piece, what's the minerals?
That's actually Bruce.
Bruce?
I get into refining, processing,
So let's do some refining.
exporting
Let's do some
natural gas
processing.
to our allies
Right
around the
here,
world.
live,
All right.
refining. Go ahead. Cathy
I
McMorris
like that
Rodgers.
idea.
Uh-huh.
I like that idea.
We
I
could
like
set
it.
something up right here in this room.
Thank you. Yes. 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 Thank you. I'm very excited to be a part of H.R.1, this energy package. Energy is foundational to our economy. It's foundational to our national security. And fundamentally, American leadership matters. That's what the America First Policy Institute is all about, is the importance of American leadership. And energy is the driver of all that. Larry, you were talking about the refined products. You just think about what energy has meant as far as American leadership in lifting people out of poverty, raising the standard of living, more than any other country in the history of the world. And energy and everything that has come, everything that we have innovated and all the technology around it has driven us to be the highest standard of living in the history of the world and raising more people out of poverty. And this package is so important. It's important to ensuring that we are energy independent. We spent decades becoming energy independent. And this is about increasing American energy, domestic energy, while continuing to bring down carbon emissions. America leads the world. You know, those on the other side of the aisle are saying, well, this is about polluters, right? Or, you know, it's like the biggest polluter in the world right now is China. And the policies driven by the Biden administration right now are benefiting China. It is supply chains controlled by China. So our legislation is about increasing domestic energy here. It is about securing our supply chains, and it is about bringing down the cost of energy, which is hitting people every time they go to fill up their cars with gas, when they try to heat their homes. All these costs have gone up. That's what has driven inflation, which is impacting us in so many different ways, and very proud to be a part of this package. For the Energy and Commerce Committee, we get into some of the permitting. We're streamlining the permitting process. You know, anytime there's a federal project right now, on average, it's 7 years to get permitted, and it's the biggest barrier to doing anything right now in the United States of America. Any energy project, a new plant, refining, pipelines, whatever you want to do. If you want to manufacture, the biggest barrier to doing anything right now is permitting and the regulatory climate in this country. And so addressing some of these permitting regulatory issues is a part of our bill. We don't reduce, we maintain our very high environmental standards to protect water and air, but we do address some of the duplication and streamline so we can actually get projects built. We focus on natural gas and allowing for the export of natural gas is one of the best things that we could do to create jobs here, but also for our allies around the world. It's one of the, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, they've been begging us for natural gas for years. And that's what we've been promoting for years is this natural gas that would be cleaner. Has really been the driver of us bringing down carbon emissions. We focus, we have a statement in there about the importance of the Keystone Pipeline and make sure that this administration can't stop the fracking in the United States. That's what President Putin did in Europe. As we know, he was funding the NGOs.
Is Keystone directly affected by this?
We
pipeline?
do. Is it in the bill?
Yeah.
Yes. So we have provisions for Keystone Pipeline. Yes, we are encouraging more pipelines, more refining, more American energy.
Is Joe Manchin's little pipeline in there?
No.
No. Good. Sorry. Sorry. That's kind of a little, It wasn't
we
a
will
cheap
go to
shot.
work with the Senate.
It was
Yeah.
a tickle, that's all.
We will go to work with the Senate
Yes,
on
ma'am.
permitting, and Senator Manchin, I know, is anxious to go to work on that. We're anxious to get a real permitting bill in place for all pipelines in America.
Yes, there you go, all pipelines, West Virginia and the rest of the country. Can I just make one other point? Another AFPI distinguished former cabinet secretary, my dear friend Rick Perry, makes the point, Cathy, we produce more natural gas and more LNG, and we export it to India, to, heaven forbid, China. That will do more to reduce any climate or global warming than anything that Biden's have come up with. That's how important that is.
Yes, it's true.
I'm telling you, you want to make, it's better to make peace than war. We can export, then they'll rely on us, which is exactly what we want. That's what energy independence is all about.
Gas makes peace.
All right. Let me go to Sam Graves. Sam, you want to talk some water?
Yep.
That's your piece of this. Sam is the chair of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Water, puddles. Puddles are terrible.
Puddles.
Biden just went after puddles again.
So I want to add something to what Larry said earlier. You said that, we have fossil fuels in toothpaste, our phones, diapers, you name it. I'm going to add one more thing to that, and it's fertilizer. And you know what that means? All of our food, all of it. So the basic building block or the basic ingredient for nitrogen fertilizer, and I'm talking about phosphorus or potassium, I'm talking about nitrogen, which you have to have. The basic ingredient for that is natural gas. There's no way around it. And so if you increase the price of natural gas, it increases the price of nitrogen, which increases the price of our food. It doesn't matter if you're growing pickles from McDonald's or you're growing feedstock. It's going to increase the price of our food.
Yeah.
So the Transportation Committee, our component of this is the 401 permitting reform. You have to get a 401 permit to do any energy project in the United States. Well, what's happened over time, and that was actually developed through the Clean Water Act, is a good provision. And it's based on the criteria, it's based on water quality. Well, what's happened over time is we have states that have weaponized that. So you take states like New York, New Jersey, Oregon, Washington State, they have denied permits on LNG facilities, on pipelines, based on criteria outside of the Clean Water Act. They've actually denied projects based on noise and based on inconvenience to citizens. And so they have used 401 permitting to deny those projects moving forward. So what we have done is just clarified it. We have said that you have to fall under the Clean Water Act and water quality provisions to be able to deny a permit. We are in no way telling the states that they don't still have their autonomy, that they can't increase their clean water or their water quality standards. We are in no way trying to prevent that. There's nothing in this bill that does that, but what it says is you have to stay within those parameters. You have to stay within the original intent of the law, the Clean Water Act, when it comes to permitting authority, not go outside it and do it for frivolous reasons that they have come up with. And so that is, we're just simplifying this more than anything else, and it needs to happen. It's part of the whole permitting process, and so we're looking forward to it. It's going to be
fabulous.
A great bill.
No, it's really important. Thank you. Bruce Westerman, Chair of the House Committee on Natural Resources. Bruce, did the NEPA stuff fall under your jurisdiction?
It does.
Because I want to say, where's Francis Brook? He's here someplace. Francis Brook, where is he?
He's here, Larry.
There he is.
All right. Francis Brook, who is now Steve Scalise's policy director, was deputy director of the National Economic Council when I was director. Francis and I, Andrew Ullman, and a whole bunch of people, we worked our tails off on that. And I think that was one of Donald Trump's best things, was NEPA reforms. So one of the first things that Joe Biden did was cancel the NEPA reforms. So you can tell us how you want to resurrect the NEPA reforms, please. Thank you for your work.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank everyone for being here. You know, to talk about NEPA, it reminds me of a story that was told by one of Larry Kudlow's contemporaries, Aesop. He it was called the Eagle and the Arrow. The Eagle and the Arrow. The story goes, there was an eagle soaring high above the landscape, and all of a sudden he was struck by an arrow, and as he fluttered to the ground with his lifeblood pouring out. He looked back at the arrow and he said, "Alas, I have been pierced by an arrow feathered with my own plume." And that's what Democrat energy policy is doing to our country.
I was there when that happened.
Yeah.
I was the note taker.
So the Biden administration energy policy is doing great harm to our country, and we're doing it to ourselves. There's no reason we should be doing this to our own country. And maybe it's just the engineer in me, but as I look at their policy, I really only see two flaws with the Biden energy policy. It's physics and math. Now they've got problems in both of those areas, and they've got these grandiose ideas on what their energy policy is going to do for the climate. But in reality, they're doing more damage to the climate. And we know that we produce cleaner and safer with no human rights violations. We win on every point when we produce energy and minerals here in America. And that's what the natural resources component of the Lower Energy Cost Act does. It allows us to produce from our own natural resources. When we look at public lands and waters, it reinstates the permitting process. You know, we all know on day one, Joe Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. The first week, he put a moratorium on federal leases, and even with court challenges, with them giving lip service to it, we're further behind on leases than we've been since World War II. So he has fulfilled his campaign promise to stop producing energy on federal lands, and I would ask him, how's that working out for you, Joe? It's causing across the board 40% energy price increase for our constituents. For Americans rich or poor, they're paying 40% more, and a lot more in some areas. The other part of it is developing our minerals. God blessed America. He gave us all the energy. He gave us all the mineral deposits that we would need to build things here in America. Yet, just one statistic, we could go through every mineral and critical element, but take copper, for example. It is the main ingredient to electrification. And in 1995, we produced 3 times more copper than China. Today, China produces 10 times more copper than we do. We have 2 copper refineries. They have 50. This is insanity when we have the deposits right here in America where we can use them and not only break Chinese supply chains, create national security, we can create tremendous wealth for Americans, for American workers. Larry, there's a report that USGS and Commerce did that shows that today in America we produce about $120 billion worth of mined and recycled raw material. When we process that $120 billion becomes $900 billion worth of processed minerals. When we manufacture from that $900 billion, it adds $3.7 trillion to our GDP. That's the potential we have here. That's the potential that we want to unlock. You know, Republicans are the original conservatives. Teddy Roosevelt was the father of conservation. And a conservative is someone who believes in unchosen obligations. We want to have a strong economy and a healthy environment, and we do not believe the two are mutually exclusive. Actually, they're symbiotic. You look around the world, look where the worst economies are and look at their environmental standards. Look where the best economies are, look at their environmental standards.
Exactly. Bjorn Lomborg has written about this. It is so important what you just said. The healthier, more prosperous economy, the lower the emissions and the better the air and the water. So this is just a key point. I want to ask you a couple things. They canceled they either slowed it down or canceled the mineral finding up in the Iron Range by Lake Superior in Minnesota. So actually, that damages the quest for renewables and for, stuff that goes into batteries and electric vehicles, which they're so keen on.
You can't make this up, Larry, and I call it political ping pong. The Obama administration pulled the lease on the Twin Metals project. The Trump administration put it back in place. The Biden administration pulled the lease. What does that signal to investors? What does it signal to investors when you put $2 billion into a copper mine in Arizona, and now they're trying to pull the lease on that. It's death by 1,000 cuts. But that mine in Minnesota has the largest deposit of cobalt. It has nickel, platinum, and palladium, and copper. And with all the money in the IRA and everything the left's looking at to create a non-carbon economy, that mine is absolutely essential, yet they pull the lease on it. The not in my backyard philosophy that they have is bad for America, and the only people that benefit from that are the Chinese Communist Party, Vladimir Putin, and other despots around the world.
Can I, so important, these points. H.R.1 will go back to a 1 or 2 year time limit for decisions, and does it go back to the idea we had one federal decision so all the agencies get coordinated?
Yeah, one-stop shop in essence, for permits, for a lot of the things you need to build that infrastructure. Just almost impossible to build pipelines or other infrastructure to move energy. And part of it is because you have 4 or 5 agencies that are sometimes in the way of getting your project done. And by in the way, you know who they are. They're all these radical environmental groups that are, by the way, we're going to be looking into the funding of some of these groups, where they really getting their money, follow the money, which countries are benefiting by shutting down American production. There's some bad actors around the world. But if you look at what they do, they'll abuse the Endangered Species Act, and they'll go to the EPA, then they'll go to the Corps of Engineers, and then they'll go, and they're gaming the system to kill a project. If it takes you 7, 8 years to get the permit, you're just not going to file it. If you listen to Joe Biden at the State of the Union, he said, don't worry, 10 years from now we won't need any fossil fuels. But hey, why don't you invest in America? Well, I represent the deep water of the Gulf of Mexico, Port Fourchon, where they actually produce energy, and you go 60 miles offshore and you go 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet to get to the surface. Those projects are multi-billion-dollar privately invested projects, so you might be $5 to $8 billion into a project 8 years, 9 years later before you get the first oil out of the ground, if everything goes well. So if you got the president saying in 10 years we're not going to need any oil, but go make the investment, and in 8 years you're going to get your first dollar back to try to pay back that investment, you wonder why no one's making that kind of investment in America anymore. They're going to other countries, and those countries don't have the standards we do. So have a one-stop shop so you know where to go. You can't be gaming the system. Put bureaucrats on a shot clock. Look, if they send you a letter and say, hey, we need a response back in 30 days, if you're day 31, you know what happens to your private business. Why don't the bureaucrats have the same kind of shot clock on them to get an answer to you that they put on you? So one-stop shop, shot clocks, let's get stuff done. If the answer is yes or no, give us an honest answer, and then let's move forward.
I love that, the one-stop shot clock. Terrific stuff. I want to get to my old pal David Bernhardt, and former cabinet colleague, former Interior Secretary. David, first of all, we miss you at the Interior Department. The war against fossil fuels has been prominent. I'm not going to mention any names, but I didn't like her. And will H.R.1 work? Will H.R.1 work, David Bernhardt?
So this
Feel free to speak. You're among friends here.
This is really an incredible effort by these committee chairmen and the majority leader. What we have is the most substantive, broadest energy bill that's come out of the House in at least a generation as it moves forward. And that is very, very significant. The fact that it addresses energy, critical minerals, and permit processing and improvements together while maintaining environmental standards is something that's very significant, is very serious, and it was done through the regular committee process, which is a testament to all of you working through it. And it addresses bad regulatory ideas. It addresses bad court decisions that have put things off track, and contains a ton of innovative ideas, and you really should be commended for your work on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Clifton, are you listening? This is very important. This is a turning point. This is the House Republicans' first major bill, which is a widespread bill, for economic growth and lower inflation. Clifton's a very important guy, writes a newsletter. Everybody reads strategics. We got anybody inside agitators or outside agitators?
By the way, this is us keeping our word. I know you don't see this a lot in Washington. We said if you give us the majority, we will do these things, and we're doing these exact things.
All right, I want to thank our House members for taking the time. I know they're very busy because there is a revolution going on. It's called the House Republican Majority. Nobody took it seriously. I kept arguing you should take it seriously. This is a perfect example how important it is that the GOP took back the House.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just like that. Steve Scalise, Sam Graves, thank you very much. Cathy, thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
Mr. Westerman, thank you very much. And David Bernhardt, the best of the best. I'm Kudlow.
Thank you all.
Folks.
Thanks, Larry.
Appreciate it.
All right, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for this wonderful panel. Thank you to everyone watching us on live stream. Please help me thank, we realize Larry Kudlow, that this is, as a founder of AFPI, this is his first time in the America First Policy Institute offices. So Larry, welcome back home here in Washington. Such a joy. And to these patriots on the stage, I thank you. To our chairman, Linda McMahon, our board member, Babu Nanwe, our incredible executive director, Secretary Chad Wolf, the incredible Renee Hudson, who runs our government relations team and do our events team. Thank you. For those of you that were with us yesterday, we launched our Biblical Foundations Project. So if you're interested in that, go to our website. And last Thursday, we had our all-day-long National Security Summit. So it's a busy time around the America First Policy Institute. So grateful for all of you for being here. God bless America, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.